Hey, everybody. Welcome everybody. As usual, please remember to sign in with the meeting notes, which I just sent on the team chat, and a reminder to follow the SLSA's code of conduct, which is linked in the meeting notes. First, we could welcome any newcomers. I don't think I see anybody. No, it doesn't look like anybody. For the 1.0 schedule, I posted in Slack and on the GitHub issue a proposed schedule that we, on this Friday, the 31st, we would be our internal deadline to get in any last changes for 1.0. One second. So on then on Monday we would release candidate 2 with an announcement, and then finally plan for 1.0 release 2 weeks later on a Wednesday, the 19th. This would give us a 2-week review period, which is what our governance doc requires with the specification license. What is it called?
Community Specification License Framework.
Thank you. Community Specification License Framework. And basically during that period, we wouldn't make any major changes. So first of all, I guess I'll leave it there. Any objections to that schedule? Okay, sounds good. So assuming that means we have just a couple more days to get any major changes in. There's a bunch of outstanding pull requests, which I linked some below that would be good to get eyeballs on and good to get them submitted. We also have in our project board, like way more things than we could possibly do in a week. And I guess we need to discuss like how much changes we should do during the review period. I suspect we should not be any major restructuring or changes, but like typo fixes, small little clarity fixes seem okay to me. But nothing that anyone like would want to like re-review. I did a pass through the project board and I created a new, they're called labels. Sorry, I thought they were called tags. I created a new tag called V1 blocker with things that I thought we can't change post 1.0. Like for example, a schema change, like changing the name of a field, changing a requirement would all be like require like a major version bump, would not be backwards compatible. And so we need to get those in now. And so I tried to do a pass of the things that I think we need to do, because I think those are the highest priority. Like we absolutely must get them in this week. If folks could validate that, that would be helpful. Like if you disagree one way or the other, like it should be added or it shouldn't be added. You know, there's no guarantee that I was correct here. Even if like one of the issues is we choose not to do it, I tried to tag the issue as we need to decide the issue now. Oh, what is shovel ready? I think the shovel ready ones are supposed to be ones that like people are more likely to be able to just like send out a pull request to do. If it would be helpful, I can quickly share my screen to go over what the just to kind of go through and see if anyone can send out pull requests to resolve these. I feel like a lot of these we can fix just because of like the time frame, and we just don't have enough bandwidth to do before the release. Some of the things we could post as like just a minor follow-up because they're clarity things that don't really change the meaning. They don't really change the spec. They don't change the schema at all. But that would just be good to do afterward, that are not going to like hamper anyone's ability to understand the spec. But that would be nice to have. The ones I tagged as a V1 block, just to kind of go through the, I guess I could go through all these issues. This is just a meta issue about the 1.0 release. Same thing with this one. This is a meta issue about tracking for tooling. So I don't think there's any work there except when we actually cut the release. One about explaining the consumer's responsibilities. Is that one a blocker? Maybe that should be a blocker. I'm going to err on the side of calling it a blocker. And then if we think that it's fine to postpone, that's fine. Creating a what's new page, I think I would call a blocker because people are going to land on it who are not familiar with one and they want to know the difference. And we already have the blog post. And so I think the goal there would be take what's already in the blog post, form it into a proper like documentation page, possibly update it with things post-release candidate 1. We have a thing on SLSA versioning. Actually, that one should probably be a V1 blocker too. And I think there's already a pull request out for this. S2C to F and SLSA, I think would be nice to have. If we have to cut something, I don't think it's a blocker. Update the threats as in progress already. Provenance discover. I guess I'll call these a blockers, but we already have pull requests for them, and they're already assigned. Unify varying across this one. Chris, I'm not sure if there's Chris is on the call, right? Yeah, Chris on the call. I'm not sure if there's any more work to do there.
No, that one should be closed.
Okay, do you mind doing that?
Yeah.
Thanks. This one is a meta issue. Record information about the builder. Guidance should look on here. I feel like these are all things that we don't need to do for 1.0, that like if we do it after the 1.0 release is not going to cause backwards compatibility problems, but it would be good to have folks review them and verify that's the case. And if you could like comment or something saying that, that would be helpful. But for the VSA, I think one backwards incompatible thing is indicating a version. It seems like something that would be backwards incompatible, so I tag that. These things I don't know. I think they're just clarity things. I don't think we're talking about actually changing requirements. Again, it would be good to have, useful to have someone kind of go through them. These are all like terminology things. I think we could easily, this was actually assigned to me, I think. I don't think it's a huge deal to change. And then all these open ones, I went through the ones that I tried to clarify whether it's just a clarity thing or actually something that requires a backwards incompatible change. And it seems like about half of them are. Some of these need, like they're kind of like a long thread. For example, builder name is, this is the builder name one. It's a discussion with several folks. I think we need someone to kind of go through it and come up with something actionable, because a lot of these issues in this list are feedback from various folks, but it's not clear like what, if any, change we would make. So it would be helpful to if anyone could grab any of these and say, here's the change we should make, or no change, or whatever. I'll try going through and pinging them. But again, that would be something that would be helpful to do, because a lot of these don't have an actual thing. And then I highlighted a couple things that are worth commenting, but if anyone wants to talk about any other topics. So sorry, that was like a long rambling thing. Maybe hopefully that was helpful to kind of highlight areas where people, like if you want to jump in and do something, those are areas that would be helpful. I'll pause there.
But so to be clear, I mean, you went through the timeline and nobody objected. It seems reasonable. I don't know why anybody would object, but what's labeled as blocker though means if we don't get to do those, we will impact the timeline.
Yeah.
Or are you going to say, no, the timeline is the master? Which way is it,
I don't know if other folks have opinions. My opinion is let's stick to the timeline and try to prioritize those issues. And if some of them, either if we don't get to, we might say, oh, well, we're not going to do it for 1.0 and we'll live with the status quo. I think if there's actually something that we really want to get to and we can't do, then I think we should push. But we technically have 3 weeks. And so if something during the 2-week comment period, if we want to make some sort of change, I feel like we should use that time, but we shouldn't plan on using that time. That should be like a buffer. I don't know if you agree or disagree.
Well, we'll have to see, what the impact is.
Yeah, I mean, just like at the current rate of change, like especially with pull requests taking like a week to merge, we're not going to get through most of these issues on time. Yeah, Melba.
I agree. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, one of the other things outside of the pull request, even if we were to get some of these things all done, let's say the miracle that we pull this off, we also need to make sure that comms is okay. We don't want to rush comms. So I know we've been working on the side with OpenSSF, and we have some blogs that are going to be coming out. So have you given any thought to how that might impact potentially the schedule? If OpenSSF is not ready, does that buy us more time, or are you still going to launch?
No, I think we should be all in sync. And if like comms or OpenSSF says to delay, then we should delay. Sorry, I didn't list any of that part. I should have said that's all happening in parallel. Yeah, I don't mean to say like we'll cut something and call it 1.0 whether anyone else is ready or not. Yeah, does that help?
It does. Yeah, I just want to make sure that we have. I know Jennifer. I'll have to find a date for Jennifer Bly's like announcement. I think it's like April 17th or something like that. I don't remember. But we can probably put that on the agenda so that people know that we plan to have OpenSSF announce this at a certain time, and that's what we're aiming for.
Yeah. I want to highlight some list of PRs that would be good to get reviews, because even if folks aren't sending PRs, reviews are certainly very, very helpful too. There's one from Arno on the version selector. That one is kind of an opinion one. Where should we put the thing? It's helpful to have
really, but it's not critical, right? I mean, it's just a UI thing.
It's not critical, but I think that is kind of one thing that like pops up immediately of like, how do I see 1.0? It's an open PR. It'd be nice to get it in.
Did I address your issue, by the way? Did you have a chance to look?
I did. I figured I'd wait to comment on the
Okay,
person.
good.
But it'd be good to have more eyeballs on it. Chris has a pull request on versioning. I think like Andrew and I commented. In particular, it's raising the question of like, should we commit to any sort of cadence on minor releases? I don't know, Chris, if you want to mention it.
Yeah, there are actually two things that seem to be controversial. The first was having patch versions, so 1.0.0 versus 1.0. The second was putting some sort of schedule in. When it comes to patch versions, I don't have a super strong opinion, but I thought David Wheeler said that they are common in the OpenSSF. The last time we spoke about versioning, I figured there's no reason to be special. As to a schedule, I've been trying to sync up with I'm blanking. I think it's Melba and Joshua on the timeline, on the roadmap. Yeah, there it is in the chat. Add to this also roadmap. Having a release schedule is nice for having a roadmap. I feel like they're kind of intertwined, but we don't have to put that on the specs page. And yeah, Andrew was saying in the chat, patch is required if we want to use semantic versioning, as opposed to coming up with our own versioning system.
And just as a reminder that some of the stuff, it might be handled already by the community spec that we've adopted. Like they have some details, not necessarily on exactly patch numbering, but exactly how you would say this is a release and that kind of thing, and the requirements for it.
Yeah, I don't know if it says it in the community specification license. So my main concern about a patch version is that like it's not like we're releasing software where you then archive it and distribute it. If we do some sort of like a typo fix or any other change that doesn't require a minor version, we usually just like want it to immediately go live. So then like, would we have a thing that automatically every time we do a commit automatically bumps the patch level? Would we, if it's yeah, that's basically the concern. And is that added patch level actually useful?
My comments around them being required, according to December, it's really just around if we're planning on saying we follow semantic versioning. I don't have hard feelings about needing to keep it in. I think it adds noise. I think major minor is cleaner if we don't plan to have that kind of granularity. But if we feel like, I mean, any change that we make is going to be immediately represented on the web page. And so it feels like we should be aware of that and have, if we're not creating versions, we could at least have some version like we have now for 1.0 is at the is the head version. Then we could just push changes to some dev latest version. And then whenever we want to say that this is a quote unquote release, then you can cut that release according to major, minor, and or patch.
So I think I kind of agree with Mark. I mean, this is not a piece of software, and you know, a lot of standards now are managed in a live way, and you know, there's things like living standards concept where you know essentially everybody wants the letters, the thing that is fixed anyway, the most up to date. In this case, if we don't add any features, we're not modifying SLSA, we're just clarifying things, fixing errors. I don't know that we need to change anything. We just update the website and that's it. If we do make any kind of changes that could impact software that is, you know, that tries to become conformant with the spec, then yes, we should make some change.
Is there?
But there is a,
Sorry.
no, just wanted to highlight one thing though that just came to mind is we still need to figure out how to do this, because the way we're managing the different versions is not using branches or anything. We actually have copies, which means it's going to be a little bit of a pain. We have to make the same changes in 2 different places. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, just one comment. At least in my industry in which I'm working, it's sometimes useful to have a good identifier for a document, which is unique to the document. So in that case, I think a patch version might be useful, even if it's not appearing almost nowhere in the document, but at least in some headers or footers, to have that patch level so that you can refer to a given version of the document. And at least in aeronautics, it's always mandatory to have those kind of identifiers each time document change, so that you know what you're talking about, basically.
One question that I had when you're talking, Arnaud, is there differentiation between the specification and the website? Like if we're just pushing changes to the website, can we say that we're doing that without also changing the specification? To me, it feels
So
like
there is a distinction in the sense that the website is bigger than the spec, right? The spec is only one, or there's a couple of specs today, but there are different subfolders. But if you, I mean, the blog, the home page, we have a community page, all of this is outside the specs. It's part of the website.
But like I guess I was thinking in terms of the threat model and any kind of non-specification, nor anything that's not on the specification page itself that's associated with the specification, while it's just pushing it to the website, it still feels like it should be tied to a specification version.
So Mark may have something to say about this, because for instance, I saw there is a pull request to move examples or use cases into the version part. So the trend has been to push more and more of the content to the version folder. Mark.
Yeah, exactly. I think almost everything is versioned except for like the top level splash page. And I think right now, like the community page of like what the different SIGs are, and there might be one other, the blog post, the blog section. So yeah, most of it is versioned. I guess, I mean, my main worry is just like this, like the mechanics of it. Like if we say that we're going to have a patch number, how are we going to implement it? And if we have to like manually update it on every pull request, it's just not ever going to get done right. If we have some automatic thing that bumps it, we will have to write that, and we barely have time to make the actual content changes. So like who's going to do that and when? And if we say that we're doing it but not doing it, then that doesn't seem very good either. That's basically my thought.
So I don't think anyone has their hand up. Like if you quote a web page, and sorry about the vacuuming in the background, you're supposed to put the date that you copied whatever text it was from the website if you're using like proper citation stuff. And like in GitHub, you can go see the history of a page by looking at literally the history. So I feel like, to your point, if we're just making minor changes that don't impact the actual spec, like it's not a change that anyone would really notice other than someone comparing two versions of the page, I'm not sure that we need a patch version. People can just reference a date if they need specificity.
We also do include like a view source on GitHub link that links to the exact markdown file.
Right. So if they need that specificity, like it exists, I don't think we should have to maintain it or keep up with it.
I mean, one like compromise solution would be on like the footer or something, we could list the git commit it was built from or something like that, although I'm not sure how useful that is.
Has anybody looked at the possibility of changing from the directory configuration to instead a branch configuration? I don't know if it's possible to do within Jekyll, but then it could flow that any PRs are made to the main branch. And then on whatever this cadence is that we want, we can submit a PR to the version branch and bump the version.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we ultimately do want to do. I don't think anyone likes making file copies. It's just work to set it up. You'd have to set up GitHub Actions or Netlify or something like that. Well, we'd either have to set up GitHub Actions to push to the GitHub Pages branch and like write all that code, or set up Netlify and change our host to actually be hosted on Netlify, which again could build. Either way, like it's just work. It's some amount of work that no one has done yet.
Hey, if you want to volunteer, you're welcome. You know, it is. You bring up an issue, you get to own it.
Yeah. I mean, I really just like how we're doing it now. Like it would solve a lot of problems. It would also allow us to change. That's like a necessary but not sufficient step for changing our rendering engine, because we're using like whatever old version of Jekyll GitHub Pages uses, which is like really painful to write templates in. Yeah, I think there would be a whole lot of benefits to that.
As a side note, I gave a talk about SLSA at a conference recently, and a lot of people asked, like, how do I participate? And I think they're terrified of just going into the issues and touching something. I'm wondering if we could take some of these items, which don't necessarily require them to be like in the spec, and understand like all the impacts, and tag them with like good for someone to start with or something on some requests or issues we have where it's like independent of the version, and just be like, if somebody wants to contribute and they understand Jekyll, like this would be potentially an issue where you don't necessarily have to understand everything yet.
Yeah, I think that's right. That's, if anyone is willing to like open an issue about this and just write that down, that would be super helpful. Even more helpful to actually go and do it. But first open an issue just so we like two people aren't working on the same thing at the same time. Yeah, that's a good point, Nicole.
I can only support that thought. I mean, you know, Mark and I have done some of the changes that are really just UI related, trying to get the website a bit better, easier to maintain the content and stuff like this. And, you know, if there are other people who have some Jekyll skills, for instance, Liquid is a pain in the butt to work with. And so if there are people who have more experience, they're more than welcome. And there are things like the version selector that, you know, Mark was talking about earlier. I did that this weekend, and it's kind of like there's a design aspect. There are probably better people than me at doing graphical design for websites. So if some people have these kind of skills, they're more than welcome to come and help us. And this requires no knowledge of salsa per se, right?
So for this particular issue, the patch number, my proposal, I think creating GitHub issues or like some sort of build process and blah, 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 that would be great if someone could file that issue. Coming back to the original issue of like the patch number, my proposal is that because we don't have a structure in place that allow us to do it right away, I am really hesitant to commit to doing it. So my preference would be to not commit to do it. Say we're logically doing semantic versioning, but just not displaying the patch number. Because like otherwise everything in that doc makes sense, like major versus minor. I think we could also spell out what we mean by major and minor changes because it's written for software, not really a specification. And then we could always start doing that later and update, but we could kind of like under promise now and then promise more later once we're able to do that.
That works for me.
Same for me. But can I ask just a little question? Do we plan at some point to have PDF versions of the specs, or just we just want websites? Just
So there is a single page version that I worked on that's available now from the menu. And I was thinking the next step is to work on a print version of that that you could, there are ways with CSS, right, to fine tune the style sheet so that when you actually print that page, it looks better. But or maybe use some tool if we want to have links and all that to work. But
okay.
So that's, that's been in the back of my mind that eventually we want to get there. But for now, the closest we have is we have access to a single page version. So there's a format like that.
Okay, so I will contact you. I did this kind of work in the past. So
Okay.
I'll be given help if you want to move that way.
All right, sounds good.
Okay. Unless there are other comments of the previous topic, jump right in. I'll move on to the next one. I have an issue 741 of just switching to lower camel case for the verification summary format. I can easily send out a pull request to change that. The issue is that we use lower camel case in one format and snake case with underscores in the other. Like we need to pick one consistently. And that's again one that we can't change once we do reads, because that would be a major version bump. So if you have objections, please raise them now on that issue. I don't know if Joshua is here. I don't see Joshua. We have an old PR from a couple months ago. I just wanted any objection to closing it. I'm just trying to keep the list of pulls only have fresh ones. That way, when you know like what needs to be reviewed. It's the one on the conformance program, because I think when we first opened it, we thought that would be part of the spec. Now we're saying it's kind of like outside the spec.
Yeah, we do need to make sure there's no like dangling links in the content of the spec, though. I don't know.
Yeah, I think
At
that
some
pull request
point-
would have added new pages about the conformance program, but like I think it hasn't been touched in months.
Yeah, what I was saying is the content of the spec may already have links to a certification page that doesn't exist, because the expectation that eventually there would be something. So we may want to have a look for that. But yeah, otherwise I agree. Maybe I can have a look, see if I can find the links. then
There are dangling links. I know of at least two.
there
I
you
can clean them up.
go. Thanks.
Good point. So yeah, so we need to resolve that. Chris, since you mentioned, or I know, could one of you just open an issue to track and tag it with the V1 blocker that we should fix that, like just at least fix the dangling links?
Okay, I can do that.
Thanks. So issue work the pull request. If you just, yeah, and I'll just ping the thread. And if there's no work on this, then maybe we just close it and then reopen it again when work resumes on it. I don't know. I listed a couple other open pull requests that just need reviews. I don't think we necessarily need to discuss them here, but they're just, yeah, I don't think they're anything controversial. Any other 1.0 topics it's worth discussing now? Or 1.0 GitHub issues. Okay, Melba, you want to talk about the next topic?
I think Melba left.
Oh no. Okay. Oh, I see. Yeah. So there's so she mentioned in the meeting notes doc, which again I'll paste here in case people join late. That's just the meeting notes doc. There's a pull request for a blog post explaining why we split into tracks. I think that was just submitted by Michael earlier today. The build versus source, is that the same as a blog post, Mike?
So originally they were going to separate it, but I think it's simple enough to just have the one blog that just sort of describes the breadth and depth of SLSA, and then saying like, hey, why did we start to split up? Like, because I think the reason why we split it up is not long enough for an entire blog. It's more like a paragraph or two. So I included it all in the one blog article.
I see. So we should just be reviewing the pull request and not this other doc.
Which other doc? Sorry.
Why break up build versus source?
Oh, actually, I'm not familiar with this thing from Melva. This might be something else, actually. Never mind.
Oh. Oh, I see. I feel like we should resolve, because those two sound similar.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought we had resolved it, that it was just going to be the one.
Okay, sounds like maybe Melba, Chris, and Mike should coordinate.
Yep.
Okay. And then there's also the SLSA 1.0 comms plan, if folks could review. I don't know if there's anything to discuss now, just a request for review. Melba, I think also in the Slack channel posted a bunch of links for things to review in the positioning, SCI positioning channel, I believe. I could paste it here. Breadth and depth is also why break up. And what is Fresca? Okay. Any other topics to discuss or anything that would be useful to cover while everyone is here?
I just made that one issue and advertised it on LinkedIn and Twitter and all the places. But do we actually like legitimately have a label for like good for first contribution or something, kind of like GitLab does, that we could direct people to in general, or no?
I think the answer is no, we don't, but yes, we should and can have one.
So I used to tag good first issues as shovel ready, but then I sort of got the opinion that there are very few good first issues.
Yeah, they are rare ducks, like the one about, hey, if anyone has DevOps knowledge and wants to make branches is one. So, I mean, that's sort of why a lot of contributors get scared off at first, because there is so few items that are good to start with. So it is in no way urgent, but if anyone thinks of a tag that we could use rarely and maybe like put a little note in README, like if you're not sure where to get started, we have a few issues that, don't require a lot of context and they're tagged with blah or whatever.
Yeah, we have shovel ready. We could always rename it to something more readable. I don't think much thought has been gone into the issues that have that tag, but that tag is supposed to be. It's described as good issues for newcomers. I think also ones that are tagged with website are ones that don't, are not really specific to the specification itself, but rather just, CSS or something like that.
Cool. I will suggest those.
So we should update the contributing MD file with whatever we want to do here.
I'm going to start with the website one because that sounds the most
That's a
straightforward.
good first issue, is to update the contributing file explaining, how to find first issues and how to tag them. It's a bit recursive, but
Okay, anything else?
A little question. The other day I opened an issue about the use of the build word. Is this useful for us or is it not? I mean, I'm still new in the with you guys, so I don't know if where to stop, where to start all the time. So
Yeah, I think it is very useful.
okay.
I did not tag that one as a blocker because I think
No,
it
it's
could
not.
change later and it would be fine post 1.0. It wouldn't require like a version bump. But yeah, I do think it's something that we should use consistently, and the inconsistency causes confusion. Like I see it a lot that we, for example, like platform versus system versus service, process. You mentioned a bunch. It was. I think it's good feedback.
Yeah,
so,
I did read the whole spec to find all of them.
yeah, and I think there, like the next step would be to come up with like a set of consistent terms. Like ideally, we have as few terms as, like, we want the terms that we need and no more. For example, there's an open pull request that Kara just sent out earlier today, I think, that result here. Where's the pull request? It is standardized. It's pull request number 739. Terms such as developer, maintainer, etc. Producer, maintainer, developer, publisher, author. We've used those terms kind of interchangeably, kind of not. And so she sent out a thing with like a guideline of like we say producer when we need, like we usually use producer. We don't use maintainer except in this very limited case. We don't use author except in this very limited case. So I think we need to do the same thing with build. And so coming up with like, what are good terms for that? Like a proposed set of terms, and then avoiding all of the use of all other terms except for those would be a good next step.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's where a lot of the feedback issues are right now, which is that it is, I think all the feedback has been useful. A lot of them, it's unclear like what the next step is, because like there's a lot of discussion. For example, this one 653 is another example. Actually, so Jacques' feedback is actually probably more actionable than others, but it's still not like a list of changes. And so I think we need to take these issues of like, well, this is confusing, that's confusing, and synthesize that into, okay, here's the proposed difference. We used to say this, we now would say this. Yeah. But certainly any continued feedback of like, this is confusing is still useful. Like, I don't want anyone to not give that feedback because they don't know how to fix it. An important first step is gathering the list. So. Okay, with that, I think that we're done. Hopefully I'll talk to everyone on Slack and through GitHub. Thanks everyone for joining. I'll talk to you soon.